name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I thought it would be fun to show my favorite pip decks. I have been going through my decks lately and trying to organize them through categories. So looking at my pip decks, seeing that one, I don't have too many of them, but then also realizing which ones are my favorites and for what reasons. So personally, for me, pip decks are not a category that I would say are that I would define as my favorite types of decks for the most part, with some exceptions, these decks being the exceptions. So I guess we'll get right into it. I'll explain what about them I like, why I use them in what ways, and what makes them unique. So I'm somebody who needs some sort of difference or differentiation in the imagery of the cards. So for example, Marseille is usually not my favorite system. I know that the way that the certain, say, like wands and swords and cups and the configurations and the minute details do vary, and they are there for a reason, but I need something a little bit more than that for me personally. That's my preference. So I'll start with the White Sage Tarot. I've mentioned this a while back on my channel. It's one that, but in person readings, when I'm doing readings in a shop, I always have this one on me. I love to use it for chakra readings just because the deck itself does reference the chakra system and uses colors in that way. So here's just a little bit on that. So we go up through the seven main chakras, 7 core chakras, and these are just 2 cards that give us a little bit of a better understanding of how the deck is working with them. But these are colors that most of us might already associate with the chakras. So if you know your chakras, you don't need these cards, but they're nice to have. And so there is that element to the pips. When we're looking at the pips, we have, for example, the 4 of Wands. We get 4 wands, but we also get colors going on here in terms of the ribbons, and we can tie those into the chakras. So I like that. It's something that adds to the idea of the pip, of there being more than just 4 of that thing. See, we have the big ribbon going down the middle for the 8 of Pentacles, that being yellow, so I'm tying it more so to the solar plexus chakra and really thinking about the 8 of Pentacles in that fashion, in that way, and tying that into a reading for a client. I also really like to use this actual deck for chakra readings oftentimes, so I'll be laying out the cards and I can reference the connection between the chakras. I can reference the energies going on within a given chakra based on the colors. The quartz are really nice and also really simplistic, just like the pips or the minors. So we have things like that. It's a really great deck, very relaxing in tone. It's soft, but not too sweet, not overly sweet. I would say it's very neutral. So I love the pips in this deck for that chakra color correspondence that I can tie in really easily. And it's nice. It's one of those US game systems that comes in a tin, so it's nice and portable, and I like it for that too. Next, we will look at the Tarot of the Alchemical Magnum Opus by Robert M. Place. So this is more of a distillation of the Alchemical Tarot, which I think many are familiar with, but this is one that has kind of simplified the elements in that deck. So it comes in this nice linen slide hard box. We get a nice little guidebook here. And the minors, for the most part, are more pippish. So we have elements that tie in with the alchemy of each card. So we have the 4 of Swords. So we have more than just the 4 swords. We have a figure here with a third eye that's opened. For the 6 of Batons or Wands, we do have that figure with the laurel going on their head, which we would see in a lot of Rider-Waite-Smith imagery. But we also just have, there's not much going on. So I do consider this a pip deck. This one specifically is pretty pippish, but we always have something more going on, which is what I like. And of course, the imagery going on is tied to alchemy. It's tied to the Alchemical Tarot. It takes the imagery of those very detailed scenic cards and takes just basically the biggest elements from each one, brings it into, say, a pippish type card, and then gives us one little hint of what it's speaking to. The majors are renamed for the alchemical phases. But yeah, we have things like the 8 of Coins here. So these pips to me are very interesting. They're entertaining. There's something more to them than meets the eye. There's something more than just the base line of the amount of that suit being exemplified. That's what I look for in a pip deck, and that's why I really like this. And of course, tying it into the alchemy and all of the literature that Robert M. Place has on his alchemical decks is really valuable. So there's that as well. It adds another layer. So I really love this one. So next we will look at the Hardy Tarot. I believe this one, you can get it on Etsy. I think it's still in print. White Sage Tarot, you can get on a lot of different websites. The US Games website, Amazon, I got mine on Amazon. And the Tarot of the Alchemical Magnum Opus you can get on Robert M. Place's website. And the Hardy Tarot you can get on Etsy. I believe Etsy is the primary place. That's where I got it as well. So this deck feels a bit thothy to me, as in the Thoth system in its pippishness. There's a lot going on even still in the pippish aspect. So we have things like the birds flying around. There are some that are more simplistic, that are more, for example, we have this, the Five of Swords. The way that the pips have been arranged in many of the cards is the same as the Thoth deck. In others, it's a bit different, but all the same, there's this pippishness going on. But we get different elements, like this pentacle, this disc, is differently colored. The way that they are surrounding each other, what does this look like? It looks like a swirl of storm clouds. We have these swords pointing down onto these jagged, almost obelisk-looking forms down here, and we have flowers pointing down from above. We have branches of a tree. There's this equalizing stability here. It's clearly winter, so I'm thinking of the cold and the barren. The way that the discs are even illustrated is very interesting. There's a lot of detail to each of them. So this is a pip deck that I love because there is so much detail, or attention to detail, to the way that they are drawn. This reminds me of a compass. They all remind me of something. The Four of Discs here is really cool in the way it plays with color and the way that they all sort of come together. The fourth disc really being a uniting factor between the three. So there's that stabilization there. The Nine of Wands, and so we get those astrological, planetary sort of correspondences going on here, some that appear to be alchemical almost. Very interesting. We have the Three of Discs, which reminds me very much of the Thoth in that the keyword is work or works. So we have those gears needing to turn, relying upon each other. So there's something to go on, a way to kind of derive meaning from the simplicity. There's little nods. Seven of Cups very much speaks to that Thoth keyword of debauch and the idea of substances. So I really enjoy the nods to the Thoth in this deck. It's a great pip deck. There's a lot going on here in terms of the pips. And there's no little white book for this one, to the best of my knowledge. I don't think there was. So you really just have to go on your intuition and what you know of the tarot. Next, I will get into the Marigold Tarot. This is one that is kind of underrated in my collection. I don't use it nearly as much as I feel I should. These are the backs. It's beautifully made, very, very quality linen cardstock. You can get this on the creator's website. The creator of this deck is Amrit Brar. So if you just Google the Marigold Tarot or look up the Marigold Tarot or Amrit Brar, you will find the deck. This one, actually, the pips to me are a little bit more difficult to read. There is less of a difference. There's less to go on, but they're still equally beautiful, and they are all a little bit different. So the cups are all skulls, or the head skulls, that have been turned into a cup of a sort. Ten of Wands. Wands are really very flowery in this deck. Nine of Swords. I like this one actually a lot. I think there's a lot to go on here. The knives kind of, the daggers going down towards the jaw. I think we hold a lot of tension, so there's that idea of worry and stress that we hold in our jaw, and it's almost like knives are coming down upon it. Ten of Rings. Rings are the discs or the pentacles in this, and so that's really interesting to see. It's almost like a physical manifestation of the tangible of the earth. So there's a lot that goes into this deck. There's a really comprehensive PDF guide that goes into the cultural history behind this deck as well, which I think is really an important factor in the pips and in the overall deck. But we get a lot of cool things going on here. We have the crescent moon with the crossed swords, the Two of Swords, the Five of Swords. There's that break, which we can see in a decent amount of pip decks. I think go about the Five of Swords in that way. A lot of detail, a lot of quality and attention to what is supposed to be meant in every stroke, line stroke, and art, the art style. So I really enjoy this one. It's one that I should probably use more, and now that I've pulled it out, I hopefully will. So that's the Marigold Tarot. Next, I will show you guys the Visionary Tarot. Now this is one that's relatively new to my collection. I saw it and I really liked it for its nautical theme, the ocean being a big factor in this. So it comes with the little white book, which is actually really helpful. It doesn't, the cards to me feel very Rider-Waite-Smith, but there are some deviations in the fact that it's pippish in and of itself is a deviation from the Rider-Waite-Smith. So the suits have been renamed. So we have the Seven of Arrows with those fish hooks. So there's some really cool things going on, and these stylistic choices in how certain cards are depicted are not always the easiest to interpret, but they're always interesting nonetheless. So there's a lot of room for, as I'm not showing any of the pips, there's a lot of room for interpretation and intuition to play and have fun, and it's just a really cool black and white deck. There's a lot of room to create your own meanings or to derive different meanings from the images. It almost feels very mystical. So for those who really like that nautical, watery, intuitive feeling kind of deck, this might be a hit for you. It's one that I've found gives really unique and straightforward messages, especially through the pips, things like this Five of Branches and considering what this is speaking to. And so that is a favorite pip deck of mine. Next up, we will look at the Orbifold Tarot. Now this is one I recently mentioned in a video I did about reading energy. So this is a deck that is, I would say, the most simplistic of all. I would say even the majors and the courts are in a way a pip or pippish, because we don't have any people, we don't have scenes, we don't have animals, we don't have anything that looks like what we would see in our world, our daily life. It's all about color, it's all about shape and line, it's all about feeling and energy, and so it's quite pippish. There's not a lot to go on. You start to see different configurations of, for the most part, circles. So circles play a big role. Circles or spheres play a big role. There's also the idea of the light and the dark almost creating what seems like a three-dimensional image, and how you might interact with that idea, the configurations of the circles. This actually reminds me of, I'm not sure if anybody had a computer that did this, but it was when older models of computers would have this lock screen that would have this circle that would kind of start to bounce around while it was asleep almost, and they would look like this. So that's what that reminds me of, actually. But this really causes you to think. You really have to dig. You really have to play on your emotions and intuitions here, because there isn't anything that's going to, I would say, trigger feelings and thoughts related to one's daily life. Very interesting deck. So it's kind of in its own category in that way, but to me it seems quite pippish, so I am including it here, and it's definitely a favorite. And I will end with the Masonic Tarot. This is a really recent acquisition, one that I've wanted for an extremely long time. I wanted to save it for the end because I didn't want to just put it out there. It is out of print, and it's relatively difficult to get your hands on, or at least it's not usually very, it's usually on the more expensive side when it is available. I was lucky and I got a really great deal on this copy, but I would say that this is potentially my favorite Pip deck out there. So let's see, title card. And so this deck, the borders are going to be different on every single card. There's attention to the way that the cups are created. The top part is going to be different. There's just different symbols for everything. This one then has that more angular figure shape going here. There are a lot of really great videos on this from both, I believe it's Sacred Seed has a really great video, great videos on this deck, as well as, why can I not remember his name? I'll try to remember and link both below if you're at all curious, but if you just search the Masonic Tarot, I'm sure they'll come up. But this is just such a great deck. There's so much attention. I think it's to some degree still in order. In the cups we have things like this. So you do get just that base element of the cups, but then you'll get little flourishes. The borders are different. There's these drops. Let me pick out some interesting ones to look at. So there's a lot of meaning here. Of course, Freemasonry and the Freemasons, it's a secret order, and there's a lot of hidden meaning in a lot of what they already did. So in making a deck and having the pips, of course, there's going to be a lot of hidden meaning derived from the shapes and the lines and all that's going on in terms of color and all of that. So a lot of really cool things going on in this deck. So definitely a favorite. So that brings us to the end of my favorite Pip decks. I do have a few more. I didn't want to make this video too extensively long. Some honorable mentions, I guess, would be the Pagan Otherworlds is one that I really enjoy. There's the Raven's Prophecy Tarot, which I also really love and enjoy. I'm not even sure if the Raven's Prophecy would be considered a Pip deck, just because each card is very different and even the majors are kind of the same style, so I didn't include that one. But yeah, these were just a few of my favorite Pip decks. To me, Pip decks are so interesting. You really have to get into the detail and the minutia to understand the inner workings going on, so they kind of stand in their own category in that way. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'd be curious, what are some of your favorite Pip decks, and for what reasons? And do you like Pip decks? Are you somebody who really likes the minimalistic imagery and how you can read with that? So yeah, I'd be curious to know. I hope you are all well, and until next time, bye everyone.